everybody? It's Dave here, Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been publicly commenting on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. That's right. And we got some good news this week. Yes. We're going to start it off with not one, not two, but 3 or 4 themes this week. Bonus episode. Yes, it is. We have starting off now with Jared Allen and Kevin O'Connell winning some honors, which is cool. Well-deserved for both of them. Overdue for Jared Allen. Then we're moving into Kevin O'Connell and has he planted a seedling for his coaching tree? We'll discuss it and find out. And does somebody going off to not be a head coach count as a seedling? We'll answer those questions. And then we're going to get into This Week in Vikings Land with the news that happened this week that Darren finds absolutely fascinating, and it involves J.J. McCarthy. All right, there's enough of a teaser for you to stick around and watch. With that, we'll finish everything up with a look at the wide receivers. All on today's Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And we're back, and we want to welcome everybody here. We have Norse Vias, the best mod in the business. We have Doc Proto, Drewster. We have David Rinaldi. Yo, Peter, how are you doing today? Fork in SKOL, welcome. Haven't seen you before, at least not by that name. Anthony Tollison, the Ant-Man, welcome to the show. And anybody else that's watching that hasn't joined the chat yet, welcome, welcome, welcome. As usual, we're going to start off with, how's things in the Great White North there, Darren?
Still cold, Dave. But I'm warmed by the events that happened this week regarding the Vikings.
That's freaking awesome. Hey there, George.
There's a ton of it too, man. We got so much to talk about today. I don't know if we're going to be able to fit it all in, man.
Well, I hope we do. And we might as well get going with it. We're starting with theme 1. Honors.
Indeed, honors. Thanks, Drew, for commenting on both of our T-shirts. Soundgarden, my favorite band. Rest in peace, Chris Cornell. Wish you were still with us. But on to the football stuff. Yes, honors. Was it Wednesday night, Thursday night, something like that?
Thursday.
Thursday night. Viking fans got some great news when the NFL, when Canton and the Hall of Fame announced it's class of 2025, only 4 players this time. And our Jared Allen, the Vikings Jared Allen, was named to Canton. Going to get a jacket. And got
I saw it just before the show. Hate to interrupt. He was just fitted for it today.
Awesome. And it was in his 5th year of eligibility. He should have been in there before that, but we've talked about that before. We won't get into that again, but great to see Jared Allen get this. He now joins other defensive linemen from the Vikes, the great Alan Page, the great Carl Eller, the great Chris Dolman, and the great and mouthy John Randall. Jared Allen gets to join them, and like you said, well-deserved. Should have been in there on the first or second go-around, but he's in. And I was a bit worried because this was a tough field. It always is, but Terrell Suggs was in there. I thought he might get in over Jared Allen. He did not. So great. And of course, the other guy that should be in there is the guy pictured here to my left, Jim Marshall. but we've talked about that before too.
And secondly, Kevin Williams needs to be in there as well.
Yes, and you'd sent along an article today, earlier this morning, that talking about his case for the Hall of Fame, and it's a lot stronger than maybe you would think. Particularly if you're not a Vikings fan, you would really overlook a guy like Kevin Williams, I think. But Viking fans don't overlook him. But just great to see Jared Allen get this. He was just, for me, it was a pleasure watching this guy play for the Vikings when he did. Extremely fun to watch, and a great player who was the best of the best at his time, which is why you get in the Hall of Fame. 4-time first team All-Pro. So just great to see him get in there. And I think he's the 14th Viking now to get into the Hall of Fame. So congratulations, Jared Allen. Should have been in there earlier, but you're in, and we're happy for you.
Yeah, I was hearing a podcast with the beat writer that does the voting for this and does the advocating for the award. And he was saying, he got up there and just said, Jared Allen deserves to be in, period. And he was explaining the rules, how they're doing 4 minimum. A fifth can go in if it gets over 80% of the vote. And there was no fifth that got 80% of the vote. But they're saying they're trying to reform how they're doing things because people are slipping through the cracks. Jared Allen was one of them. Why it took so long, but we are happy he is finally in the Hall of Fame. And it gives us the possibility of having the Hall of Fame game this year.
Yes. I don't think the Vikings have ever played in that.
They have. Last time was
a while ago, I guess.
It was a while ago, but they did, and the field was crap, and they had problems. But it was, but it gives them that extra preseason game should they get selected, and they also come to camp a week earlier if selected. So there are benefits and disadvantages to it. So we'll see, but who knows? But I'm just happy he's in. It's about time.
It is. And speaking of honors, Kevin O'Connell, when the NFL Honors Night occurred, Kevin O'Connell, who's not the only Viking who was up for some awards, but he's the only one that won one. Coach of the Year, NFL's Coach of the Year. And again, just like Allen had a tough field to get into the Hall of Fame, Kevin O'Connell had a really tough field. He was up against, in Coach of the Year, Dan Campbell from the Lions, Andy Reid from the Kansas City Chiefs, the Walrus. You had Dan Quinn from the Washington Commies, and then the Antichrist, Sean Payton from the Denver Broncos. You could make a case for any of them to be considered Coach of the Year this year, but certainly Kevin O'Connell had a very strong a case as any of them, and him getting this award now, it's been pretty nifty 3 years for him, Dave. NFC North title, two playoff appearances, and now NFL Coach of the Year. And it's pretty clear that the Wolves made the right decision in 2022 when they hired this guy, because 34-17 record during regular season record during that time. And of the 10 coaches that were hired in 2022, which includes Kevin O'Connell, the other nine, 6 of them have already been fired. Again, that's another bit of proof that Kevin O'Connell was the right choice for the Vikings, and the Wolves nailed this selection for the guy to replace Mike Zimmer. So, great news for Kevin O'Connell. And now really the next step for him, though, of course, is that, you've had the divisional title in your first year. You had a 13-win season and a 14-win season in your 3 seasons as head coach, which has only George Seifert's the only one that's ever done that. You've now got an NFL Coach of the Year award on your resume. So the next step, of course, is you've won a bunch of regular season games. You've gotten these awards, but now it's time to win several playoff games and get to the Super Bowl and win the Lombardi Trophy and get the first Lombardi Trophy ever for the Vikings. That is Kevin O'Connell's next assignment and the next accomplishment that we hope he gets.
I agree wholeheartedly. Now, he's only the second Minnesota Vikings coach to win Coach of the Year. Bud Grant did it in 1969, and we had a marvelous, marvelous decade of football under Bud Grant. It was legendary. Let's hope that that legendary pattern continues, only this time Kevin does what Bud couldn't and win that Lombardi. Now, I do want to answer Sarah's question, and I saw North Fias already did. Jared Allen selected the Vikings to go in as a Viking. So he will represent us.
Yeah, see, he did play 6 years here, with the most that he played with any of the 4 franchises that he played for. And I think that even though he got drafted by the Chiefs and spent 4 years there, the way he left the Chiefs, it was acrimonious. Of course, he had some alcohol issues that he got cleaned up, but he always fully embraced being a Viking, loved being a Viking, it seemed. And I had no doubt that he was going to choose to go in as a Viking when he got named to the Hall of Fame on Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful deal, and can't wait to watch it this August. So that's the end of Theme 1. That means Theme 2. Interesting. Something's not working right. Okay. We're going to talk about a coaching tree.
Potential coaching tree, I guess. Folks on here know that this offseason, since it started, that several Vikings coaches on Kevin O'Connell's staff have gotten interviews for promotions with other teams. And Brian Flores got 3 head coaching interviews, Jets, Jaguars, and how come I can't remember the other one? But anyway, there was 3. You'll correct me on that one. Josh McCown got a head coaching interview with the New York Jets. Durante Jones got 2 interviews to be defensive coordinator for the Bears and the Jaguars. He got passed over for both of those. Grant Udinski had several interviews for offensive coordinator, and he is the only one out of that crew of 4 that ended up is moving on and got a promotion. He was named by the Jaguars late on Thursday night as their new offensive coordinator under the new head coach Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. So congratulations to Grant Udinski. It's and he just turned 29, so really young, but he's a guy that's gotten a reputation as being a rising star in the coaching ranks. I believe that and I think it was Sam Darnold this year who said they called him a football savant, I believe. But the impact of Udinski leaving the Vikings is you never want to lose really good coaches. So and he's considered to be, again, a rising star. Kevin O'Connell loved him. So, that it might have an impact on the Vikings, but I don't think you got to be careful if you're worried about losing Udinski, about overstating the impact he had with the Vikings this year. He was their special projects guy, but also their assistant quarterback coach and their assistant offensive coordinator. So he wasn't the quarterback coach, Josh McCown was. He wasn't the offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips was. And he isn't calling the plays. Kevin O'Connell calls the plays and will continue to call the plays as long as he's coach of the Minnesota Vikings. So Udinski certainly helped Sam Darnold have the year that he had and helped the Vikings offense score the 9th most points in the NFL. But I think overall, the Vikings are going to be just fine in 2025 with Udinski moving on. Now, would I have been upset if Kevin O'Connell decided to get rid of Wes Phillips as the offensive coordinator and promote Udinski as the new offensive coordinator? Yeah, because I'm not really sure what Wes Phillips does on this team. But now I'm sure he works long hours. But again, I'm just not sure the value he's adding to this offense. But that's something that's just my opinion.
It may be just that he's buds with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, and that's not
board, and it's a relationship that Kevin wants to keep there. So that's what.
I think you're right there, Dave. And I would argue that's not a reason to keep a guy as your offensive coordinator, but it's done all over the NFL. So it's not, it's not something that we have never seen before. Dennis Green. But anyway, but moving on to that, I guess the thing that that struck me about Udinski getting this job at such a young age is that really good coaches have a habit of identifying young coaches and finding those rising stars and nurturing them and mentoring them, and then they move on to become usually specifically more head coaches in the NFL. Udinski is just an offensive coordinator, but not a head coach yet. But I wonder if this is like the first sapling that has been planted of the Kevin O'Connell coaching tree, with Udinski moving on. Now, again, like I said, when you've got really great coaches, a lot of them have developed coaching trees. Bill Walsh's coaching tree is probably the most famous and successful, and Dennis Green came from that coaching tree. Mike Shanahan established a coaching tree. He's also from the Bill Walsh coaching tree, but he established a pretty lengthy one. Bill Belichick established a coaching tree. Now his coaching tree has been pretty much a flop, almost all of them except for Mike Vrabel. And Sean McVay has established in his young career a bit of a coaching tree, and Kevin O'Connell is part of that coaching tree. Although O'Connell also got his first NFL job was with under Mike Shanahan in Washington, but so he's got part of two coaching trees really. But I do wonder about that. If this is the first one for Kevin O'Connell as a part of a coaching tree for him, and if he is establishing a coaching tree, that bodes really well, I think, for the Vikings' chances of getting to a Super Bowl and winning it, because as the other guys I mentioned, all of them with those coaching trees, all those guys have Super Bowl rings, and 3 of the 4 of them have multiple Super Bowl rings. So just something I thought about, whether this might be the first of many that Kevin O'Connell is going to have on a staff that are going to fly off elsewhere and land bigger jobs, particularly head coaching jobs.
Yeah. I was going to debate whether to be part of the coaching tree, do you have to be my head coach? Now, Sarah asked, would Brian Flores be part of Belichick's coaching tree, which I would say yes, because he went from Bill Belichick to head coach in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's back to defensive coordinator under Kevin O'Connell. If he goes and gets a job someplace else as a head coach, I think he does both. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about this. This is a great, great topic for a deep dive, probably later in the offseason, to look at the spaghetti mess, how coaches are interrelated and get influences from other ones. Well, you talked about Bill Walsh being one of the premier ones, and absolutely it's true. What tree was he off of?
I used to know this. I believe he was at Don Coryell, right? Or in Cincinnati. He was in Cincinnati, wasn't he?
Was it Bill Brown? Not Bill Brown. The Browns' famous head coach.
Yeah. Which we're losing his first name here, which is shame on us.
5, 6, 7, 8 decades before us.
Yeah.
But it all interrelates, and it comes down, and you've got, like, KOC is considered a McVay, but he also works with Shanahan, and all that stuff intertwines on their influences, and it'd be interesting to look to see how they flow. We didn't talk about the Parcells coaching tree, which beget Bill Belichick, which beget Mike Zimmer and others. Or you talked about Denny Green. Denny Green he was one of the bigger ones, to include Mike Tice. Now, but he had like 5 or 6 that went off.
Well, yes.
So
yeah,
it's a fascinating topic that you could dive for hours or days upon. And we'll see if there's enough time during this offseason. And if I ever get into it, we'll do it.
I get the sense Dave's about to go into a rabbit hole here over the next couple of weeks, but
we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. All right. Now on to theme 3. See if this works. And it doesn't. Great. It's supposed to link and show the graphic. It didn't, but oh well. This week in Vikings land.
Yeah, I've got a few topics again that piqued my interest and I want to talk about. And it's this now that once an NFL team is done with its regular season and playoffs, Dave, and there's 30 of them that are not playing on Sunday, it immediately becomes like what if speculation season for all over the NFL. And it's begun for the Minnesota Vikings. And of course, the quarterback situation is the one that has been the most debated again for the Minnesota Vikings.
Important spot in sports. Why wouldn't it be?
Yes. Well, that's right. Except, we thought last year after the draft had occurred that was going to die down. But of course it has not because of what happened this year. But anyway, I wanted to touch on this because, people are making the rounds at Super Bowl week and on various radio shows and talking and being interviewed. And Albert Breer was Sports Illustrated's NFL writer, had a few interesting things to say about the J.J. McCarthy issue. When he was on the Rich Eisen show, he said that J.J. McCarthy was ahead of schedule in his rehab from his meniscus injury to his knee. And that has since been confirmed by and that matches up with what Kevin O'Connell said in his end of season presser. And then he also, it's been confirmed by J.J. McCarthy this week too, and going in various interviews that he has done on various shows. So that was one thing that was good news if you're a Vikings fan. But Breer also said, not on the Eisen show, but in some other interview, that the Vikings, he said, consider that J.J. McCarthy will at least be a solid starter in the NFL. And I want to dive into that comment a bit because solid starter sounds nice and everything, but J.J. McCarthy was not drafted 10th overall in the 2024 draft to be a solid starter. He was drafted to be the franchise guy, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL eventually, and a guy that's going to lead you to a Super Bowl and win it or win multiple Super Bowls. That is what J.J. McCarthy was drafted for. If he just becomes a solid starter, then that means that draft pick is, I believe, a failure, Dave. And not as big a bust as this guy, Christian Ponder, who was picked 11th overall back in 2011, I believe. But still, J.J. McCarthy being a solid starter, that ain't where the Vikings want him to go. And that's not the kind of player they want him to be. As I said, J.J. McCarthy is a guy that they want to be franchise guy, a guy who eliminates any talk about who is the number one quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings for the next 10 to 15 years. That's what he's got to be considered a successful pick where he was. And now I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be that guy. And I hope he is that guy. But nothing's assured yet, and acknowledging he has not played a regular season game in the NFL yet. But again, solid starters usually don't win Super Bowls. And so J.J. McCarthy, he's got to be way better than that for this pick to be worthwhile in the end.
I think he's going to be, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. He shows last year's draft class was outstanding across the board for the young rookie QBs. And it was just, I think he would have been one of the better ones. We'll find out this season. But it's going to be all right. Now, you were worried about, he revealed that he had ADHD.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't remember seeing any of that in the lead up. And he was on the Eisen show.
I saw too.
He was on the Eisen show, talked about that. And I was a bit disappointed with the Eisen interview, and somebody else mentioned it, or not mentioned, but they mentioned the Eisen love of J.J. McCarthy. But they spent just as much time during their 10-minute interview talking about Michigan and being disappointed that Ohio State won the national championship this year as they did about how J.J. McCarthy's doing in his recovery and how does he see his place with the Vikings in 2025 and what's he going to do to improve as a player. They didn't get into a lot of that. It was a lot of Michigan, love. I'm not interested in that. Drew Brunting is, but I'm not interested in that. But anyway, but he did say in that he said he had ADHD, and again, I had not heard that. It's the first I'd heard of it, but he, in typical J.J. McCarthy fashion, he referred to it as kind of his superpower in that he said people have attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder that if they really, really love something, they lock into it totally like you would not believe. And I think the implication there is, from what J.J. McCarthy says, is that he loves football intensely. And so when he's at it, he's going to be locked in. Maybe more than there'll be a hyper focus with him, super focus. He's going to be locked in like he might like you would not believe, which I think is a very good thing for McCarthy and for the Vikings. They need a focused guy like that who's going to be their franchise quarterback. And so, just an observation there. I thought, and again, I did not know he had ADHD, but really looking forward to McCarthy and seeing what he does this offseason and in the 2025 regular season.
Well, in my research on ADHD, there's unsuccessful ADHD patients that have all sorts of problems that leads to problems as adults. There's those that take ADHD and turn it into a, quote, superpower. This graphic I took from a medical center that specifies that and what it happens, what it can do if it's used as a superpower. And just about everything on here we've seen from him via creative problem solving, increased willingness to take risks, strong intuition, increased curiosity, et cetera, boundless energy, all the way down. Very empathetic. We see him with the other teammates, rooting them on. It's all sorts of great and glorious. And I think it will be just that. I think it could be a superpower for him. And Kevin O'Connell said this week, we may have to, if he let him, he would be at the facility every single day in the offseason and he'd work, probably overwork. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to have to rein him back a little bit. That's the type of quarterback we have. Now, that's the type of quarterback we want. I sent off to Drew this morning. There was an interview that was taped with Tom Brady where Tom Brady was talking about how he beat the Chiefs. And it was not only did he know the defenses and study the defenses, he studied the players, and he knew just by looking it was going to be a blitz, or it was not going to be a blitz, and it was going to be cover two. As he comes out of the huddle, he's seeing this. And he studied, he goes, it's tons and tons of film study to learn, and then it's processing. How quickly he processes it. He goes, that was his superpower. It wasn't his legs, wasn't his arm, was none of that. It was how quickly he could process what he sees. Now, if that translates over to J.J. McCarthy, we're going to have a legend on our hands. And I'm hoping that that's the case, that he can do that, because he's shown the ability so far. We drafted him and they said there's problems with his footwork and he needed to do this and he needed to do that. What did he do? He stayed at the facility all summer long and he worked on it. And they said, he's going to need to, redshirt the entire year. Well, after that first preseason game, they're talking about, oh, no, this is a race. He may start. Well, then it came up and his knee was sore and voila, torn meniscus. But if he can learn at that sort of speed, and he worked on his passing mechanics and it got better and the whole works, I think the time off while he healed, he's getting all the mental reps and everything else. I think he's going to be more than just the guy, like a Christian Ponder. I think he's going to be a superstar, is what I think. And that's just Dave being Dave.
Yeah.
I really do think this kid has it. And no matter what you want to call it, I think he's got it. So we'll find out when it comes on. We're going to find out. But, man, I like our future with him at quarterback.
So do I. Going to acknowledge T-Bass's comment there. I tried to do research on ADHD, but I got distracted by something else.
All right. To the next topic.
Yeah, well, earlier, just when we began this segment, I talked about how it's what-if season in the NFL, and a couple of big superstars revealed this week that they are, in Myles Garrett's case, the Cleveland Browns defensive end, that he has requested a trade out of the Rusty City. And
out of the hellhole that is Cleveland.
And then Cooper Kupp from the Rams went on social media, Instagram, I believe, and said that the Rams have informed him that they are going to be trying to trade him in this offseason. And, of course, two big superstars like that who are on the trading block, Viking fans start talking about, what if we trade for Myles Garrett, and what if we trade for Cooper Kupp? And Matthew Collar even did an article on this, and he even threw out a potential trade. He said, hey, what if you traded Cooper Kupp and got the Los Angeles, as well as the Los Angeles Rams first round pick in this upcoming draft with it, which is 26th overall, for Jordan Addison. Now, he wasn't suggesting it was happening. It's, like I said, it's what if season, but he threw that out there. But it got to me thinking about the trading of established veteran players, which often is a good thing when you trade draft picks for veterans, because a draft pick, that we said it many times on the show, it's just like, what does Tyler call it? It's an idea, right? they're just picks. They're not actually players. They don't have a track record. You have no guarantee you're going to get any production out of them at all. Well, it did get me thinking, because at what point do the Vikings and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah start with all the trades that he has done in the past 3 years and trading away draft picks? When do the Vikings get back to hunkering down on the draft and develop strategy that so many teams use? And everybody says that that's the way you build a sustainable winner in the NFL, because it got me thinking of that, because the two, we know that right now we've got the 3 draft picks, the 1st and 2 and the 5th. We also think we're going to get a compensatory 3rd rounder, but that's only 4 picks maximum right now that we can have for this draft. And with the trades that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah made this during this season for the 2 Cams, we've also eaten into our 2026 draft capital. The Cam Robinson trade, remember, the Vikings traded for him. It was a conditional 5th that could be turned into a 4th based on undisclosed conditions, but we assume it was playing time. And the Vikings were going to get a conditional 7th out of that based on undisclosed conditions. Well, pretty sure that Cam Robinson has met those playing time thresholds, because he played pretty much every offensive snap on the Vikings from the time he joined the Vikings. So the 5th rounder in 2026 is now turned into a 4th rounder, and we're probably not going to get the 7th rounder in 2026. Meanwhile, when we made the trade for Cam Akers, it was for a conditional 6th based on undisclosed conditions for Akers, and a conditional 7th in 2026. The 6th rounder is in 2026 too. Well, again, Akers played a fair bit. As soon as he got to Minnesota. So I would say that we're certainly going to be giving the Rams a 6th rounder in 2026. Now, we will get a 7th rounder, but it's a lower round. So I don't think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah regrets these trades. They did feel needs at the time, particularly the Cam Robinson trade, and those players played pretty well I think Akers played pretty well the whole time he was here, and Robinson played pretty well initially and then fell off a cliff the last 3 or 4 or 5 games of the season, unfortunately. But they filled needs. I don't think we regret having them. And sometimes you had a Vikings team that was having a surprisingly good year, and they had some holes, and you had to fill them. So you made those trades. But it did in this year where we have very little draft capital. We've already, again, eaten into the 2026 draft capital. And I wonder at what point in time, considering the 2022 drafts of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the 2023 draft of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah haven't really brought in a whole lot of players who draftees, those picks have not produced very much for the Vikings. At what point does this trading away draft picks, is that going to catch up to the Vikings in our hope of having a sustainable long-term winner that wins year after year, makes the playoffs year after year, and is a Super Bowl contender year after year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope he improves on what he does. Now, the discussion in the chats over McCarthy, whether he's good or not because he hasn't played an NFL game, that in the draft process, you're looking at their experience up until that point. Everybody that's in the draft hasn't played an NFL game, but you learn over time and through experimentation, through process, through history, what to look for when these young men are coming out of college as to will it translate to the NFL. If it was 100% crapshoot, why even bother drafting them? I mean, just go pick them off the street somewhere. Get a bunch of UDFAs and you don't have to pay them. But it's not 100% crapshoot. It is, there are questions and not everybody works. You can draft a first rounder and be a complete bust. But whose fault is that if that's the case? Is it the young kid? Did he peak out in college and that was it and couldn't make the transition? Why didn't you identify that? Or you can find somebody that's lower rounds that suddenly becomes a stud. You can occasionally find some undrafted guys that are that way and that make the Hall of Fame, but they are rare. So when we say we think J.J. McCarthy is going to be good, it's because he has demonstrated it at every single point of his life so far playing football. And why would the transition to the NFL be any different is the only question that's left unanswered. But everything's pointing to, no, he's going to grow. And did we see growth last year in the offseason? Yes, we did. So that's why I choose to be optimistic and say, no, I think this kid's got it. That's why, you know, they do what they do. Trading away draft picks, that's because one need, generally, and to get somebody established, to not go through the developmental time, whether it be TJ Hawkinson, all right? We got him after he was developed in Detroit. Whether it be the Cam Robinson we needed because we lost our left tackle. We needed a competent left tackle. And Cam Robinson is a competent left tackle. He's not great. He's decent. He's not horrible. But that's what it was. Now, when it comes to Cam Akers, we needed a running back because they got hurt. And KOC went with one that he trusted. Now, hopefully this year, if he wants him back, he signs him back and not trades for him again and waste, that sort of pick. But it is what it is. So that's why we feel the way we do about J.J. McCarthy and what Kwesi's been doing. We want to get back to where he's drafting 7 guys and they all are studs.
Which nobody does, by the way.
Which is virtually impossible, but yeah.
Yeah. Not even Howie Roseman the past couple of years has been doing that. Mm-hmm. And he's like the draft king right now in the NFL. But yeah.
All right, next topic. Person everybody loves to boo, Roger Goodell.
Yes, this last topic isn't Viking-centric, but it does impact the Vikings and all NFL teams, and it has to do with Roger Goodell and his State of the NFL speech this week. Floated the idea of an 18-game regular season schedule, which was quickly responded to by the NFLPA's executive director, Lloyd Howell Jr., who said that no NFL player wants to play 18 regular season games. Which is, I'm not surprised by that.
For it.
Yes, they do. And there is going to be an 18 regular season games, Dave. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it's going to happen. First off, the evening out the 17, the odd numbered regular season, the 17 games right now. You go to 18, then every NFL team is guaranteed a 9th home game instead of having it alternate seasons. So that's extra revenue there that they're going to make. NFL owners are not in the practice of giving away extra revenue. And also with the 18 regular season game and only the 2 preseason games, again, you've got that extra home game, and taking away that preseason game, you're going to generate more revenue by having that a regular season game than you would as a preseason game. And having that preseason game on national TV as opposed to a local affiliate that you get for a preseason game, again, extra revenue there. Also, once you go to 18 regular season games, Dave, the NFL can go to NBC, ESPN, CBS, Fox, Crave, Hulu, whatever the hell they're streaming the games on now, and they seem to be streaming them everywhere. They can go to those folks for TV rights deals and go, hey guys, 18 regular season games now, like, pay up, time to pay up. How much is this worth for you? And it's going to be worth a lot. So that is a whole bunch of revenue. And then when you're getting more TV revenue because you've got more regular season games, your value of your NFL franchise is going to go up too. And owners love that. So there's a whole bunch of financial reasons why 18 regular season games is going to happen. I know Howell Jr. says the players don't want to play 18 regular season games, but the NFL owners are going to do what they always do, and they're going to offer the players a sizable extra amount of that financial pie, and they might throw them some other bones with the off season and cut down on some of the OTA times or training camp or whatever, and the players are going to agree to it. They always do, and the salary cap will go up, and you'll have 18 regular season games. It's just a matter of whether it happens in 2026 or 2027. Well, it won't happen in 2026, but a little bit later on in this decade, or maybe it'll be 2034 after the new collective bargaining agreement is in. But it is going to happen. And the reason it's going to happen, Dave, is because of people like you and me. NFL fans, right? Like, I don't remember there was a huge outcry from NFL fans to say, go to 17 games, NFL. Please do that. But when the NFL did it,
16 was a nice round number. Arguments.
Yes.
When they went to 17, everybody's like, hey, more football.
Yeah, we watched.
They still played the 20 weeks total of 4. Before it was 16. We had 4 preseason games and then 16 regular. Then we went to 17 regular season and down to 3 preseason. Now we're going to 18 and down to 2. It's still the 20. Now, obviously, a real counting game means the starters play more than just preseason scrums. But, hey, it is what it is. Now, there are some benefits to an 18-game season that the players will like.
Do tell, Dave.
One is they're going to get a second bye week, which is great. Why? Because that bumps the Super Bowl out one more week.
Lessening the offseason for the NFL, too.
Well, not just that. Bumping it out one more week runs it into President's Day weekend here in the States. It's where we celebrate our presidents. It used to be George Washington's birthday, but now it's President's Day. And it's a federal holiday, and everybody has that Monday off. They've already done studies that the Monday after the Super Bowl is a poor production day at work because most people are coming hungover, don't care, talking about the Super Bowl or whatever, coming late, they're sick, calling in sick because they got a hangover, whatever it is. If it's a holiday, right, a federal holiday, hey, it's cool. Let's party and watch. It's going to be even a bigger event. And I think that's a good thing because it will be less stress on people the next day. And so they're going to spend more money on the Super Bowl. and that's going to be increased revenue. Now, when it comes to the next players agreement, I think the pie is going to shift and the players are going to get more. And I think that's how they're going to do this. But yes, and the chat's talking about overseas games.
Yes.
There's rumor came out this week that we may be going to Australia in 2026.
I think you are. They've confirmed there's going to be a game in Melbourne in 2020. Oh, you mean the Vikings?
The Vikings are that.
Well, I heard the rumor that they'll be playing in Cork, Ireland, or
possibly this year. Dublin. Yeah. They've already announced. They announced yesterday, 2 days ago, that the Steelers are playing in Dublin this year. Well, Dublin was a city founded by the Vikings in the 850s. It's a natural spot for the Vikings to go. So, how much you want to wager that the Steelers will be hosting the Minnesota Vikings to come back and take what is rightfully theirs? I bet it's a perfect storyline. It'd be great. Mm-hmm. But as much as we don't like losing that home game, however, generally it's a home game that if we're a home team, we're still getting 8 home games for the owners to do, and overseas ones get split. So it's not like the owners are losing money, and a lot of times they make more money because the overseas stadium can hold more. But it's expanding the league, and they like it because the whole idea is bring in more money, get more people involved, get more people excited, bring in more money, bigger money for the players, bigger money for the owners, bigger money for the league. Everything grows and everybody's happy. And we talked about, they also talked about flag football. NFL sponsored some flag football since my kids were little. And that's getting more and more prevalent across the way. And it's a good way to do things. And it's a good way to have kids play football until they want to get into high school football or something like that and do full contact. But we'll see. I think it's a good deal. And all the networks up there right now are the networks that do the broadcasting, do the filming of the games right now. Then you have all your streamers, Fubo and a whole bunch of others that come on that get to be able to, and all that extra money, it's going to help the product, hopefully, in the long run. And also, this year they announced they had the fewest concussions in a long, long time. And we're still at 17 games. So if they're working on the health, because the whole objection before was, hey, the more games we have, the more likely to get hurt. Well, if the health thing is getting better and better, there's not really an excuse in my mind.
And everybody in the chat hates the overseas games, Dave, and I don't like them either.
Unless you're overseas.
Well, yes,
like
but that's true. But the NFL is a business, and what does every business want? You want to expand your markets. So, of course, the NFL, I don't think people in the U.S. realize this but the NFL American football is a niche sport everywhere outside of the U.S. and Canada. People don't really care about it all that much. And you'd realize that when you go traveling overseas, this is exposure to the game to all these other countries. And it's what leagues do. The NHL does it. The NBA does it. I think they've kind of piggybacked on what the NFL is doing, but all these pro sports leagues are trying to, go global. And for the NBA and the NHL, it's a little different because those sports not as popular as the NFL is in North America, but those sports are played in various other countries all over the world, particularly in Europe, and are very popular. But whereas the NFL, American football isn't. So it's just the way business is. Yeah, it's growing, and they're hoping that these games, it makes sense. If you actually have the NFL going to your country, you're probably the people who are interested already are going to continue to be interested, and you're going to gain new followers. That's the thinking behind for the NFL wanting to do this. And the players don't seem to, the travel isn't great, but they seem to enjoy the experience when they go. So It's not going to stop.
No, it's not. And I think it's a great thing. And, the number one sport in the world is soccer. Football. It's not here in the States, but it is in the world. So NFL would like to, overcome that or at least period. So we'll see.
Yep.
All right. That's the end of theme 3. Now on to theme 4. And that didn't work either. Great.
Just you need a software update, Dave. I think that's what's going on.
Well, I need to fix it because I was messing with it, and it obviously didn't work. All right. Wide receivers.
Yes, our next positional analysis going to look at the wide receivers. Dave, this is probably the easiest one that I've done in the 3 or 4 years we've been doing positional analysis with the Vikings, just because of the makeup of the wide receiver room in Minnesota. And it was starting off with Justin Jefferson. Not much that I need to really add. The guy is a god amongst men and women, and he's one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL. Going to go to Canton as long as he can stay healthy. Please do stay healthy, particularly over the next 5 seasons. With what he's done in his first 4-5 seasons in the NFL, it's just unprecedented, and there's no sign of him slowing down. And he's put up those numbers with all kinds of different quarterbacks. So you don't have to worry about him. You roll him out there. He's, again, one of the best to do it in the NFL, irreplaceable. The Vikings are set there. And he's got a great running mate next to him, I think, in Jordan Addison, the number 2 wide receiver. I think, yes, his numbers and receptions in receiving yards this year were down slightly compared to his excellent rookie season, but that's because he missed 2.5 games with a sprained ankle.
Next year he's going to miss at least 3. So trade him and get a first along with him.
Possibly, Dave. Not guaranteed yet. But even so,
I'm kidding.
19 touchdown catches in 2 seasons. That's really, really good, I think. And I think that I saw progression in his game. Yes, he disappeared he disappears in games a little bit too much for my liking, but I think that's more because of just the fact that the Vikings passing game is so hyper-focused on Justin Jefferson that a lot of balls, it's not because Jordan Addison isn't getting open or is getting shut down. It's just the ball is going to other people. And I'd like to potentially it'd be better for the Vikings offense if that changed a little bit, but hey, it's hard to resist throwing it to Justin Jefferson. But with Addison, I think I saw a growth in his game, I think from his rookie year to his sophomore year. Particularly coming out of college, he was looked at. One of the knocks against him was, well, he's not that big and he has trouble with drops and contested catches. He's going to have trouble coming down on those. Well, this year, I feel like he was pretty strong on the 50-50 balls and contested catches. And you didn't see, I saw very good hands. You didn't see him drop a whole lot of balls. That has not been a concern as a rookie or in his second year. So, yes, he's got some legal issues that we're going to, we'll have to see how that
play out.
Yeah, let it play out.
They didn't suspend Rashee Rice. They aren't suspending Addison. Well, they got to play out. We got to find out what's going on.
But as far as since we drafted him, he's an excellent, as I said, an excellent running mate for Justin Jefferson. 2 very, very powerful offensive weapons that any quarterback the Vikings have is going to love throwing to, and they're dangerous guys, and teams have to account for them.
That includes Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy.
Yes. But beyond those 2, that's where things get a little bit stickier at the wide receiver room unit for the Vikings. Now, number 3, wide receiver last year, Jalen Naylor finally won that job after I thought he was going to win it in 2023, but he couldn't stay healthy, so he did not win it. But this year, he was the number 3 wide receiver. I think he had an okay season, Dave.
Again, drops, but yeah.
Well, he had 2 bad ones, I think.
They stick out. The one in the end zone was
against Tennessee, and then the drop in the red zone against the Rams. But an okay season, like Addison, only much more so. He completely disappeared after game between game 6 and till the Packers game at home at the bank, he pretty much was only getting targeted once or twice a game. So is the reason for that because Addison wasn't getting open, or again, like Addison only because he's the number 3, it's even more so? Is it just because Darnold wasn't looking in his way to throw to him and threw to Jefferson or Addison or TJ Hawkinson and was more likely to do that? I think there's probably that. But does Jalen Naylor have more to give in 2025? And if Addison gets suspended, he's going to have more to give because he's going to be the number 2 guy opposite of Justin Jefferson likely at that point. I don't know if the Vikings complete offensive staff, if Kevin O'Connell completely trust Jalen Naylor at this point to be a very dependable number 3 guy who, if somebody gets injured or suspended, you can slide him, elevate his role and he can really produce in that role. We did see him at times this season, 4 or 5 catches for 70, 80 yards. He had 3 or 4 games like that. But again, it just didn't happen enough. And I don't know whether that's because, again, the quarterback's not looking towards him because he's got better options, or it's a question of he's not good enough and he's not getting open. But I think Naylor could stand to get some competition. That competition makes people better. And so he's not going to get it from the other 2 guys who got dressed regularly as wide receivers last year, which would be Trent Sherfield and Brandon Powell. Now, between the 2 of them, they caught 15 passes last year total. I actually like Sherfield because I think he's a strong run blocker, and he graded pretty well by PFS as a special teams guy. But again, he's also he was very cheap. He was only 1.79 million cap hit. I don't think if he hits the market, he's going to get more than that. You could bring him if he wants to return to Minnesota, and the Vikings wanted him to return. You could probably get him for pretty much the same price, and he'd be satisfied in the same role he had last year. But again, can you and then Brandon Powell, who was our main punt returner, was either number 4 or number 5 receiver on the depth chart, depending on what day it was. But he hasn't, even though he's been our main punt returner the 2 years he's been with the Vikings, he's not been very explosive at all in that role, kind of meh. So I really think Sherfield and Powell, they're cheap veterans. You know what you can get from them. But I feel that the Vikings could upgrade on them, and the Vikings could stand for an upgrade, because if injuries happen and you have to elevate those guys into bigger roles, can they elevate their play and give you the production you need to be successful as an offense? I'm not really sure about that. Free agency is probably where you get that. Is one way, of course, that you're going to look to upgrade. When you look at the free agent wide receiver market right now, I'm not super jazzed by the top guys. But again, the top guys, whether it's T. Higgins or Stephon Diggs, those kind of guys, they are not coming to Minnesota because they're not coming for a wide receiver 3 role, and they're going to be and for the kind of money the Vikings would probably pay them, they're going to go elsewhere looking for a starting role and more cash. And the Vikings, I don't think, are going to be in that market. But there are some guys, I think, veterans, kind of low rent, low pay guys that I would be interested in. And one of them is the Buffalo Bills' Mac Hollins. A bit old, Dave. He'll turn 32 in September. But
Trent Sherfield's 30, I think.
Yeah. Well, and so Hollins is older. But I watched quite a few Buffalo Bill games this year because they're on TV a lot, and I really like this guy. One thing I think the Vikings are really missing at wide receiver is like a tough, physical blocking guy. Sherfield is that, but he just doesn't give you enough as a wide receiver to take on more of a role. Well, Mac Hollins is 6'4", he's 220 pounds, he's a big guy. He's a really good run blocker. He's also a feisty, chippy player. And I think that Hollins, I think the Vikings wide receiver room needs that kind of physicality. He'd be great on blocking on wide receiver screens, blocking in the running game. And he seems to have gotten better as he's gotten older. He caught 31 passes over 400 yards in kind of a backup role for the Bills this year. 2 years ago in Las Vegas, he had 52 catches. He's a big target. He had 5 receiving touchdowns this year. He was only $2.6 million on the salary cap last year. I'd be very interested in the Vikings bringing this guy in. I think he could challenge Jalen Naylor for the number 3 wide receiver role as well. The only thing is, I don't know, the Bills might be interested in bringing him back, and he might be interested in going back to Buffalo because they got to the AFC Championship game. They've got Josh Allen. That's a great situation for a veteran like him.
MVP Josh Allen.
Yes, but he's a guy I'd be very interested in bringing. Would he be willing, though, to come to Minnesota for, again, when you're guaranteeing him, well, you can compete for the number 3 wide receiver role, and at worst, you'll play 20 to 30% of the offensive snaps if you don't win that role. I don't know if Hollins would go for that, but it's possible. A little bit extra money, a little bit extra opportunity. He's one guy I'd be interested in. Another guy I'd be interested in is Rondale Moore. Totally different player than Mac Hollins, but Moore is a guy that he's in size. He's actually smaller than Brandon Powell. He's 5'7" and about 180 pounds. Now, last year he signed with he got traded to the Falcons for Desmond Ridder. He blew out his knee in August. He didn't play all of last year. But before that, he had never had caught less than 40 passes in his 3 seasons with the Cardinals. Very explosive guy, very elusive guy. He's a guy you could run on like jet sweeps and reverses, that sort of thing. Good gadget player, but also been productive as a wide receiver in the past. The Vikings don't have a player like this on their roster at all. He also, as a rookie anyway, he had returned a fair amount of punts and kickoffs. So he's got the ability to be your punt returner and replace Powell. And I think he's a much more shiftier and explosive player than Powell is. The knee injury also may lead to him being devalued in the free agent market, I think, Dave, and overlooked. So you'd have to check on the medicals and make sure that knee is all right and he hasn't lost any explosiveness or speed. But if they do check out, again, he's a guy, he could fill a role for you, and he's not going to cost very much. And I think he can challenge for the number 3 role. Now, he probably can only play in the slot for you because of his size, but he's been productive in that role in the past in Arizona. And again, wouldn't cost you very much. And he's only 24 right now. He'll turn 25 in the season, but he's young. He's got upside and he'd be cheap. I'd be pretty interested in him. A third guy that be interested in, or 2 other guys I'd be interested in. Tutu Atwell from the Rams. Similar size guy to Moore. He's coming off a career year with the Rams, and Kevin O'Connell would know him well because he was a rookie when Kevin O'Connell was there. Was very productive in the number 3 wide receiver role for the Rams last year. But the Rams, with them looking to trade Cooper Kupp, they've got Puka Nacua, but the rest of their room is kind of up for grabs. Demarcus Robinson, another one of their wide receivers, is also set to be a free agent. I think the Rams would be interested in bringing Tutu Atwell back, and I think he'd be interested in going back to the Rams. But if not, here's a guy that I think the Vikings could look at, and I'd be interested in them trying to see if he'd want to come to Minnesota. The final guy that interests me is Josh Palmer with the Chargers. Only 25, but he seems to have fallen out of favor with the Chargers the past couple of years. He had 72 catches in 2022, but he's been down around 30 or so in 2023 and last year. And with Ladd McConkey emerging over there, the Chargers seem to be still committed in Quentin Johnson and trying to see if he can amount to something. Palmer's kind of lost his role there with the Chargers, especially with them focusing more on the ground and pound and the running game under Harbaugh as the head coach. So I think he's looking for a change of scenery. He did play 67% of the offensive snaps for the Chargers last year. So I don't know if he'd be willing to come to Minnesota to compete for a wide receiver number 3 role. I think he's looking for a bigger role, but if he was interested, he'd also probably be a bit pricier than the other guys I mentioned, but he's somebody that I'd be really interested in the Vikings looking at it and bringing in, and he'd really improve the depth of the Vikings wide receiver room. If we got him
on the market.
Yes.
He may want more money, but if the market's not willing to pay, he may come, drop his price.
This is true. So those are some of the free agents guys that interest me. Other people are bringing in some names. Let's see, Ant-Man's talked about Sterling Shepard. I'm a hard no on Sterling Shepard, but anyway. But outside of the free agency market, draft-wise, I don't see any chance that we draft a wide receiver, even if we add some draft picks to the 4 that we probably are going to have in April. So what the Vikings are going to have to do, but they are certainly going to bring in guys as undrafted rookie free agents, 2 or 3 of them. And impossible to know who those might be at this point. We might get a better idea when we start hearing about the rumors of who were the top 30 visits and who have the Vikings met with in the draft process and all of that. But here's a name to keep in mind. Efton Chisholm III. Who is Efton Chisholm III? Well, he is a fifth-year senior from Eastern Washington. You might remember Eastern Washington is where Cooper Kupp played his college ball. These are different guys. Kupp is about 3 inches taller and 10 pounds heavier than Chisholm is right now, but Chisholm was super productive at Eastern Washington. Not as productive as Kupp, but still really productive. Last year, he had 120 catches, 1,300 receiving yards, 13 TDs. In his 5-year career, he had 341 catches, 3,700 yards, almost 3,800 yards, 37 TDs in his 5-year career. He was productive every season he played. He also returned punts and kickoffs regularly. And when the Vikings are looking at undrafted rookie free agents to bring in, they're going to have to consider their special teams abilities and look for guys, I think, that can be at least competent as punt and kickoff returners, because we need to find somebody to add some juice to both of those. Chisholm can potentially do that. Now, Eastern Washington isn't really that great as a college competition, but this guy was a late invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl after he played really well at the Hula Bowl, another all-star game. He ended up at the East-West Shrine Bowl being the East's top wide receiver in that game. He had 4 catches for 42 yards. He also they had used him in returning punts and kickoffs in that game. And in the practices in the games, I saw write-ups. He got attention from scouts. They felt he really played well. He was one of the standouts in the practices and the game. And the problem is he may have stood out too much, because he's gone from a guy that probably wasn't going to get drafted to now some of those scouts think he might be potentially a late day 3 pick. So unless the Vikings want to use one of their 5th rounders, and I don't think they will, on Efton Chisholm III, they're going to have to hope he doesn't get drafted, and then they can try to sign him there. And I would encourage them to do so, because I think this guy is a guy that, again, he's got special teams ability. He can return punts and kicks. And I think he can be a guy who can develop into a player potentially who could be worth using a roster spot on, like Adam Thielen, the route Adam Thielen took out of Minnesota State. So that's the wide receiver room, Dave. I think, Justin Jefferson, Addison, and Naylor will be back, of course. But Sherfield and Powell, I guarantee you one of them won't be back, and possibly 2 of them won't be back.
Yeah, it's everything I'm seeing so far I agree with. We do need to upgrade on the punt returner, and punt returning's difficult. That's a tough thing to do. But Powell was just below average at it. Average 9 yards. Give me 9 yards, you're average. I think he was 8.1 or something like that. Kickoff return, hey, you got to be dynamic. You got to be able to break one. Did we have one broke last year? Nope. I want to find somebody that could do that. Whether it be a wide receiver, wide receivers are usually it, but it could also be a running back or somebody, corner, somebody that can catch and run. So we'll find out. But we'll see. Now, this kid is interesting. Would be a great UDFA to sign. And they're looking at those already. So
yes.
And so we'll see. Let's see if he drops beyond into the UDFA range. Once we're done drafting in the 5th round, I'm sure Kwesi is calling up guys going, hey, we'll sign you as a UDFA if you make that far. We'll sign you, blah, 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 blah. So we'll see.
And Norpheus has just mentioned Thayer Thomas. He's one of the guys on the practice squad right now, has signed a reserves futures contract. There's Thayer Thomas, I believe Lucky Jackson, and then Jashawn Jones are all guys that are still Vikings at this point and play wide receiver. And Thayer Thomas does return punts and kickoffs too, I believe. Jones had gotten a bit of buzz in training camp this year, but in the preseason games, he didn't stand out to me. Lucky Jackson didn't stand out to me. Thayer Thomas looked a bit better this year than he did in 2023 when he looked very overmatched. But Thomas is going into his third year potentially on the Vikings practice squad. That is not a guy who is progressing. So I don't think that those guys are options to be your main punt returner or to be the number 5 wide receiver at this point. That's got to come from free agency and from trying to bring in some new blood and striking it lucky in the undrafted rookie free agent market. And that's what I think the Vikings are going to try to do.
Hey, it'll work. Hey, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We've had a great crowd. And I hope you've enjoyed the show. We had 4 themes today, lots to talk about. We want to congratulate the one and only Jared Allen on finally being selected to the Hall of Fame, and congratulate our coach for being only the second coach in Vikings history to be selected as Coach of the Year. And may many more grand and glorious results come from that, please. But we'll find out. Any last words, everybody?
No, not really. Well, yes, I guess tomorrow's a Super Bowl, of course. Not really jazzed to see the Kansas City Philly matchup again. But what do you do? Who am I cheering for? No idea. I guess we didn't mention, Dave, a couple of things. Rick Spielman's got a new job. So good luck, New York Jets.
Yeah. Senior advisor.
Yeah, senior advisor. And also in the KOC, we didn't mention the controversy about the KOC's alleged comments about Sam Darnold's going to be a big part of when we win the Super Bowl that the Detroit Free Press reporter made, Dave Burkett. It turns out that the Vikings posted video of that interview, which Burkett wasn't listening too closely at, and it ends up he was talking about Justin Jefferson as being a big part of the Super Bowl, not Sam Darnold.
And Burkett posted right before the show that he got it wrong.
Culpa? Yeah, there we go. Took him long enough.
After 2 days of, no, I got this right. This is what I heard. Blah, 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 blah. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that created a bit of controversy that unfortunately Kevin O'Connell had to tamp down on, and the comments he made post the tweet that Burkett made were the kind of comments that Kevin O'Connell has made from day one about Sam Darnold. Love him. I love the quarterback journey he's been on. I was happy to be a part of it. But the thing he always says in those comments is that we're looking for 2025 to find the best Minnesota Vikings team. So maybe that means Sam Darnold in the mix. I don't think it does, and you don't think it does, Dave. But and maybe it doesn't.
Hey.
But
He hopes Sam Darnold goes out and gets paid well.
That's another thing interesting I found, because he's said a few times that Sam Darnold has earned the right to enter the free agent market.
Yes.
Does that sound like a guy that you're not going to let leave the building?
No.
No.
But, hey, it is what it is. Now, with Super Bowl tomorrow, I want everybody to enjoy it. However you enjoy it, whether you're watching the game and rooting for the Eagles or Zebras, whichever team you're rooting for, or if you're there to watch the commercials, I always enjoy the commercials, or the halftime show or the pregame show or whatever it is, just the spectacle of it. It's always fun to watch. Enjoy your food, and if you indulge in some good beverage, make sure you have a plan on getting a ride home if that's what you do. And I hope you guys all have a great time, but stay safe, because we want to see you next week on Monday on the Real Forno Show.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank everybody for being here. You all rock.
Yeah, it was a great comment section today, as usual.
Mm-hmm. With that, what do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby. Thanks for watching.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!